Hello and welcome to 2 Pints of Maggots and a Packet of Hooks, the fishing podcast. And what an extra special show we have for you for episode 2 of series 3. As always, we'll be looking into the tackle shed and seeing if there are any items of tackle that have caught our interest, but also looking through the archives and comparing tackle of yesteryear to today's offerings. Of course, we will be looking into the press pack, seeing if anything has been interesting in the media, whether that be weekly or monthlies, and of course, social media. But the big scoop, if we want to call it that, is a celebrity special in the big chat. We've got Mr. Robson Green. And did you know that he's actually starred in 15 different series of various angling shows? It was a great chat. Not only does he talk about his backstory as to how he started his journey in angling, a little bit about his acting career and his upcoming projects, but also some great stories from those 15 series that he has starred in the past. So without further ado, let's begin with the press pack. Well, kicking off then with Angling Times, page 4, plans for the Boddington of the North revealed. Essentially what this is saying is there's 3 waters by Sheffield called Harthill Reservoir, and the Canals and Rivers Trust, who have, I guess, rejuvenated places like Boddington, Drayton Reservoir, Clattercoat, these places that become big match weight venues, but also, you know, accessible to all. Lots of big silvers in Boddington that thrive off neglect, I guess. They're going to try and replicate this for a venue in the north, which is Harthill Reservoir. So that's one for potential big match weight venue, but also, of course, these are fantastic pleasure angler waters. Also, there's another one which I found quite interesting, page 6, which says, what future for the iconic Wensum? I remember as a kid watching, videos of John Wilson and the like fishing down there at the Wensum around Norwich. It was always big chub and roach, and there was even 1 or 2 barbel back in the day, but it seems to have, fell off the radar in terms of, major rivers or certainly angling venues in the UK. And there's a couple of reasons. There's a bit of habitat deterioration, abstraction and low flows, predators, invasive species. So these are the 3 main issues that have been cited as an issue for the Wensum. And I mention this because it could happen to any of our local venues, as healthy as a lot of our rivers are now, even though there are still numerous challenges with these big water companies. It just goes to show that the mighty can fall, so not to rest on our laurels. And I thought that was one worth pointing out. In terms of catches, well, lots of big pike, lots of big perch. It's that time of year. These fish are now pretty much as fat as they can be, ready to spawn probably next month. So some real weighty fish coming out. So £4 4 ounce perch. There is a fantastic pike of £29 2 ounce. There's the odd barbel and whatnot as well. And of course, zander, let's not forget, one from the Trent there, £14 5 ounce. So, if you are into your predator fishing, now is the time that they're absolutely on the feed. And of course, if you are a river angler, let's not forget, we've got a mere 5 weeks or so of the season left. I did spot a real nice brace of fish as well, by a chap called Jimmy Salis. He's had a £6 6 ounce chub and a £14 6 ounce barbel in the same session on the Warwickshire Avon. So there are still those great big clonking fish to target, in these last few weeks of the season. That is for sure. Also, what I found quite an interesting article to read on page 34 of the Times is it's entitled, What Can Carp Anglers Learn from Match Fishing? You can flip that around as well. Match anglers have learned a hell of a lot from carp anglers, but this is Ben Hagg, who's sponsored by Guru, and he's talking about how he flips his time between targeting specimen-sized carp and match-sized carp, if you like. And it talks about the crossover. Location is obviously a massive thing, accuracy, and of course you've got to be onto your baits as well. So well worth the read for those anglers that, if you're liking experimenting between the crossover, the 2 denominations, if you like, there's a hell of a lot to be learnt from each part. Also worth mentioning on page 48 of Angling Times is River Maestro Hadrian Whittle. where he's targeting perch on his favoured River Wye. And it's worth pointing him out because of not only his success on that river, the tactics is obviously a great little read as well, but he's also in Improve Your Course Fishing this month, targeting the same river with a slightly different approach where he's looking at roach and chub. Now, this River Wye is... This winter, some of the weights have been absolutely phenomenal. And if you've not been having a look through the angling media, weights regularly topping towards £100 of roach and chub around the Hereford area, which is just phenomenal sport. There's specific pegs that are well known to throw up huge weights for the series of matches that have taken place. But in general, these backup weights are 20, 30, £40. And that sort of sport just cannot be matched, really. We talk about the River Trent in this area where I am being very consistent, but in terms of silverfish sport, I don't think weights are anything near like that that can be achieved from the River Wye. So yeah, check out Hadrian's articles in Angling Times and Improve Your Course Fishing. And again, it just goes back to what I say, there's 5 or 6 weeks of this river season left, and there's plenty more sport to be caught. Before we dive into the monthlies, social media wise, we can build on something that we discussed on the last episode when we spoke about Andy May, an angling celebrity, if you like, with his Winning Ways channel with Jamie Hughes and all the rest of it. So when he changed sponsor, there was a lot of action on the various social media pages as where's he going to be going? Is he going to be joining Jamie at Matrix? Is it going to be somebody else? Well, of course, we've probably seen, if you're an avid match angler, that his sponsorship, his consultancy's changed over now to Preston Innovations. And what a scoop that must be for Rather Outdoors. That's the company that owns Fox International and Preston Innovations. So essentially what they've now got is Jamie Hughes, Andy May, representing 2 different brands, absolutely, but under the same banner of the same company. Rather Outdoors being an American firm that acquired both the businesses over recent times. And of course, what that means is they will both use Sonia Baits, which is part of Preston Innovations, underneath the same umbrella. So it's a real scoop for the owners of those 2 brands. And of course, it will embed even further those that are loyal towards these different brands as well. So that was quite interesting. Loads of chitter chatter on the social media as to where Andy May would wind up. Well, we all know now. Before I dive into the monthlies, I'm going to cast our eyes back to yesteryear. And the magazine that I've chosen for this month's news piece is Match Angling Plus, which I spoke about last month, February 2002. So exactly 20 years ago. And their news section at the time was called Banknotes. It's the talk of match fishing. And the opening article, the title of it, and it builds on what I've just said about the River Wye. Can rivers be great match venues again? And I'll read you the monologue at the start here where it says, there was a time when matches on the country's big rivers like the Thames, Severn, Trent and Welland would attract up to 1,000 anglers in open matches. But with the recent decline in sport, match attendances have dwindled to as little as 30 in some cases. The Wye Championship is a prime example. Colin Harvey scoops his 3rd win in the competition with a massive £113 of chub, leaving anglers with £25 not winning a penny. So that links perfectly into what I've just been explaining, is that cast now forward 20 years, no, those big 1,000-pegger events I think are certainly a thing of the past. But consistent weights, even back then, £100 River Wye, it's consistent all this winter. It talks here about the River Ouse, another venue that's seen numerous £30 nets of chub and roach. So what it's saying then is that perhaps rivers were starting to have a bit of a renaissance around 20 years ago. And has it moved on much from then? Probably not in the terminology of this article, but we've got Riverfest since then. We've got attendances are certainly up. I know on my Newark stretches of the River Trent to me on a Thursday open in the summer, they'll be attracting 60, 70 anglers. So certainly it's not, can rivers be great match venues again? Of course they can, and they are, but perhaps not to those 1,000 peggers, which the anglers of yesteryear may well remember. Let's have a delve then into the monthly magazines, where our good friend Nick Speed features in both Improve Your Course Fishing magazine and Match Fishing magazine, both on Worsborough Reservoir as well, but 2 very different approaches and 2 very different days by the looks of it as well. But I'm not going to focus too much on working my way through the magazines, I've picked out maybe one standout article for each one. Jumping into Improve Your Course Fishing, and it's an article, it's Kieran Marsden, and he's talking about dobbing. Now, when I read this, it's one of those where you think, why haven't I tried that, or why haven't I given it a whirl, if you like? And essentially it's dobbing, but with feeding, in which you don't necessarily put the two hand in hand. The whole idea of dobbing is to, attract the attention of the fish, whether it be with, a corn skin, a couple of dead maggots, bread tends to be the main one. But he's creating a feeding zone, feeding a couple of maggots every few minutes, and then he's dobbing around this feeding zone. Makes absolute sense. And he talks you through the tactics on that. So I really liked that article in Improve Your Course Fishing. A couple of good stuff in there for the predator anglers as well. Points out, some cracking venues and some tactics. So all in all, a good one. Covers everything. Improve Your Course Fishing as it always does. Some waggler fishing, river stuff, catching roach close in a commercial. Yeah, cracking. Match fishing then, the one I wanted to focus on, but the one that caught my eye, let me find it. Well, there was two actually. I was torn between the two articles. One good one by Tom Scully, where he sort of changed his approach, I guess, for commercial skimmer bream fishing. But the one, yes, it was Des Ship's usual monthly piece that he tends to do, and it says carp in the cold. And the reason why this stood out is because as I looked through the match reports and match results, the whole of this winter, there's been one venue that stood out like a sore thumb, and it's Todber Manor down in Dorset. Well, again, it's a bit of a strange one, this, because the article, the tactics, absolutely spot on for a carping session in winter. It's just I wouldn't expect to have the net of fish that he has at the end as well, because this is such a prolific venue. He's catching great big clunkers up to sort of 8-9 pound. He's probably got, I don't know what his estimate of his day's fishing is. He's probably got about 50 odd pound, and he's 2 landing nets there. But have a read of that one, because he talks about fishing meat, and I never ever fish meat in winter. I always led to believe that because of the oils, it would congeal within itself and it wouldn't be worth using, but certainly works for Des on Todber Manor. But again, the caveat being this is an incredibly prolific water, and it has been all winter, and those tactics wouldn't necessarily work on your local venue, but still very, very interesting. So those were the two key articles in this month's magazine that stood out, rather than me working my way through. But jumping back to the archives, going back to the magazine that we mentioned before, February 2002, the one article in this Angling Plus magazine that caught my eye was our friend Sean Ashby, who was our special guest on episode 1 of series 3, and it's Keep Catching with Squats. And it says the monologue, in the winter months, squats can be one of the only baits to produce a good net of fish, which is why England international Sean Ashby shows you how to fish his squat secrets. And that got me thinking, I cannot remember the last time that I bought any squats whatsoever. On a canal, probably about 1998. I genuinely can't think last time I bought any squat. I'm not sure where you can buy them around in this area. So really interesting, and it's a bit of food for thought really as to why I've perhaps not give them a go on the river that I've been fishing throughout this winter when fishing's been particularly tough. And maybe squat fishing is not as in vogue as it used to be. So tactics may have changed in 20 years, but maybe some things have been forgotten as well. So that's it now for the press pack. Let's dive straight into the big chat with Robson Green.
Teddy Fisher Baits specialise in the manufacture of fishing ground bait and additives. We combine a 40-year-old proven fish catching recipe and the experience of our skilled team. Fishing is an adventure, and here at Teddy Fisher we strive to make that adventure a success. Go to www.teddyfisher.co.uk to see our full range of baits.
Hi and welcome to the big chat. We have an extra special edition for episode 2. We have got singer, actor and all-round angler, Mr. Robson Green. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. Thanks for the build-up, Dave. I apologise now to everyone for the anticlimax.
You can give us that $5 later on. Not a problem at all. Now, listen, a big thank you for joining me. I know you're a busy man.
No worries,
but we have that shared interest with all our listeners, and that is fishing.
Yeah.
Now, when I went through doing my little bit of research, and it was a little bit, by the way.
Don't worry.
I've got Extreme Fishing 4 Series, Ultimate Catch, Grand Slam Fishing, Coastal Fishing. The list goes on and on and on. I mean, isn't it a dream job?
Well, yeah, living the dream, going to places that most professional anglers only dream of. Can you imagine that phone call? And saying to my ex-wife, when I was on the phone for an hour with my agent, who was saying, "You've had an offer to travel all over the world and go fishing." And when my ex-wife said, "Who was that on the phone?" I just went, "Wrong number. You don't want to know. Don't want to know." Yeah. So, I mean, all in all, and still to date, I carry on doing fishing shows. And I must start this whole kind of conversation off. In no way am I any kind of expert. I really feel a bit of a fraud sometimes when people want to talk to me about certain aspects of fishing, which I know very little about. The one thing I do know is I love fishing. Yeah. It is a passion. It is everything in my life and is an incredible necessity in my life. Saying fishing is a hobby, and I'm sure you agree, is like saying brain surgery is just a job. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's like I think it was John Gierak said, the lovely writer, John Gierak said, the solution to most of our problems, be they relationships, work, money, is to go fishing. And the bigger the problem, the longer the fishing trip should be. And it's so true. I've discovered this thing in my life that makes me genuinely happy. Mm-hmm. And therefore, maybe fishing isn't an activity. Maybe fishing gives you a feeling that a lot of people would pay a lot of money for, if you know what I mean. And I'm very privileged and lucky and honoured to live alongside the one constant in my life, which is the River Tyne. So after this chat, I'll be down there at the start of the season here casting a very large red snelder to see if I can get the first spring of the season.
Fantastic. Do you know, we did on the last podcast, we spoke to, and we'll get to this later on, but we spoke to a charity, Tackling Minds, about how fishing is so healthy for not only the mind, but the body and soul, I guess. And their strapline actually it links into sort of what you said, it's fishing is a way of life. Yeah. And that resonates quite well. So yeah, no, fantastic. What a lucky guy. But let's go back a little bit. I do have a bit of a theme to these podcasts. Now, I have to say, we're breaking the mold a wee bit because notwithstanding, I think, episode 3 of series 1, which was last year, when we spoke to Rob Hughes, who is the England kart manager and host of On the Bank on BT Sport, everybody else has been pretty much a match angler. So it's always been about competitions, world championships, the pressure of fishing big events and things like that. Sure. It's actually quite refreshing for me to talk about something slightly different in respect of traveling the world and these big game fish, etc. So the theme is called Past, Present and Future. Sure. So let's go right the way back to the past. And how did your fishing start?
Well, they say, give me the boy of 7 and I give you the man. And fishing today is just as joyous and wondrous and magical as it was when I was that 7-year-old. My father, God rest his soul, was a miner for 42 years of his life and worked in an industry that wasn't designed for human beings. And he worked back shift. So that meant he worked through the night. So he couldn't spend any amount of time with his family because he had to, make us kind of survive on what he could earn. So during the summer holidays, we were looking for something to do. And my father's brother, my uncle Matheson, took me fishing.
What a great name that is. You don't
Matheson
hear that anymore, do you?
Yes, indeed. No, Matheson Green. For reasons best known to other people, they call him Taff. I've no idea why, but they do.
Not Welsh. No Welsh.
He's not Welsh at all, but there you go. So yeah, we got up at 4:30 in the morning. And which was a first for me at the age of 7. I'd never got up that early. And it was in June. It was June the 1st, start of the trout season. And I didn't know anything about fishing. And he says, I'm just going to take you up to this river called the River Coquet, which is in Northumberland. And we went down to the bank, and on the way there, I saw a barn owl, saw some hedgehogs, I saw kingfishers, I saw things, and an otter, and I saw things that you only hear about or read about or see in pictures. And here at 4:30 in the morning, they were on my doorstep.
Yeah.
And suddenly, time, it's a difficult thing to articulate, but time just kind of stood still and didn't exist. And all these beautiful things that were for free were just playing out in front of you. So that first fishing experience presented so much extraordinary, life-affirming imagery, which was beautiful. And it was a beautiful morning. And we went on the bank, and he had a little 5-weight fly rod, and on the end of the nylon, he had a Tups indispensable, which anybody who knows anything about fly fishing, isn't it, is a little nymph fly, made from the hair of a sheep's testicle. So I'm going, firstly I'm going, well, that's a bit weird at the age of 7, but also goes, who thought of that?
Yeah, exactly.
When you've run out of tying gear and you look at this ram in the distance and you go, I wonder if I use that to put on this fly, I'll catch a fish. Anyway, the mind boggles. And he flicked this flyer onto the water and just let me hold the rod. And he says, if you feel anything bite, just keep the line tight and I'll talk you through it. No word of a lie, as God is my witness. 4.5 wild brown trout took that fly. And that's a huge fish. Yeah. Even today's standards, that is a huge wild brown trout. Anyway, we caught it. We couldn't take a picture of it. I only had the imagery. We caught it and we put it on the bank. And he said, that is the fish of a lifetime for a lot of anglers. So I had the fish of a lifetime at the age of 7.
First shot.
Yeah, first shot. But it was that feeling of the bite, that overwhelming, all-consuming feeling of something that just felt incredibly normal. And as the day was progressing and we started to catch fish nowhere near that size, as the day was progressing, I just started to feel that this is something really normal about this. This just makes sense. It's like by design, we're meant to do it. By design, I don't think I'm meant to be an actor. I mean, faking sincerity in front of a lens, don't get me wrong. Storytelling is an amazing thing, and pretending to be other people and in desperate need of approval from your audience is slightly absurd, ludicrous, but storytelling is beautiful. However, fishing, for me and my friends, who most of my friends are anglers, it just felt right and felt fitting. And it was like fly fishing. It fitted the river. That method just felt right as well, as though fly fishing by design was meant to catch a fish rather than the spinners and the tobers and the lures and everybody else. I'm not dissing it, but it was just beautiful.
Well, I've got this image in my mind now of this scene because you've set it out perfectly. I want to know, was that fly sinking or floating?
It was subsurface. So
did you see the take?
No. So no. You don't. With a nymph pattern, most of those takes are just underwater. But it was kind of a peaty water. Right. But I just felt the line go tight, and I knew during the battle there was something that was trying to get away. But what was taking over? What was happening? What was this feeling? Was it the calling of our forefathers? Was it, this is how we used to put food on the table? Yeah. What was this feeling rushing through my body that I need to get this creature to the bank? Was this by design what we're meant to do? Was this bringing the hunter-gatherer out in the 7-year-old kid from Newcastle? And it was a day I just didn't want to end. And I think on good fishing days, and I'm sure you've experienced a lot of them, you don't want them to end.
No, absolutely.
And time, it's irrelevant, because a lot of fishing is hours of waiting, hours of patience, and seconds of chaos. But
it's true. Yeah.
It is, yeah. But the presentation, the take, the retrieve, the netting, the catch, and whether you eat it or not, to conclude the whole kind of experience, is utterly normal to me, and is something that continues today to make me incredibly and genuinely happy.
You're right. I've had a million last casts before. That's
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
What did what happened then when you went back to see your friends in this, this mining community where you've grown up, where perhaps a lot of these lads and lasses, they've not had that chance to get out to the countryside. And did they understand where you was coming from, what you'd experienced? When you said a kingfisher, did you get blank looks? How did it?
Yeah,
you've got all this excitement back at school. How
but
do you?
Isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting when what they were more interested in were the kingfishers, a barn owl, a fox, an otter? You're kidding. What, Tarka exists in Northumberland? And I was talking to the teachers as well, when you have a show and tell and so what you did on your holiday. And I, at the age of 7, stood up in front of the class and talked about that experience. And I wish, I didn't have a camera. I only had the imagery that I had in my head, and I was trying to articulate to everyone what it felt like and the fish felt like. But it encouraged a lot of other people to go down and see the wildlife that was on your doorstep, because Matheson took me in a car, but you could cycle to these rivers. As I say, I mean, before this interview, I'm incredibly lucky to be living 5 meters from the River Tyne, the one constant in my life, and saying to people that on your doorstep is the most extraordinary wildlife. And just down the river is a waterfall where you will see salmon leap.
Yes.
Where people would travel thousands of miles to see that image.
Yeah.
Again, it's there on your doorstep. So that appreciation of nature and passing that on to others was a lovely thing. But it's strange with the fishing thing. What am I trying to say here? You have to do it and experience it to actually become hooked, I think. Anyway,
you can talk about it till the cows come home.
Absolutely,
but until they've got a rod in their hand and they've tried that cast and felt that, as you say, that take. It's hard to articulate to your peers, that is for sure.
Yeah, and David, I don't know if you know, but I mean, thankfully, more and more younger anglers, especially with lockdown, are coming on board. But at that time when I was fishing, I only knew men who fished, and very few young men who were taking it up. There was just, it's just that feeling. Some people get it from playing the piano. Some people get it from playing football. Some people get it from running. Some people get it from walking. I got this overwhelming sense of well-being at a very early age from fishing. Yeah. So I think it is different for everyone. But, I'm sure us two talking hopefully will encourage people to, go and experience fishing, but all the other add-ons around it. Because, the fact that there are healthy fish in our water is a testament to everything that's wrapped around it. The people who look after it, the nature that surrounds it, the wildlife that the fish feed off, and the balance that is kept of a beautiful river that's really well managed is something to behold. And I'd encourage people to actually, if they get a chance and if they have time, to just go and experience some of our beautiful rivers that exist in this country.
Well, that's an interesting point about having time, because I think one of the challenges that some people would say they don't get a chance to experience fishing is they've got too much going on, busy life. Life just seems so much faster nowadays with the immediacy of information, I guess, and maybe that's one of the challenges, but we'll get to that in a little while. But let's think about, so you've done that first cast, that first session with your uncle, and then it developed. So how did that fit in with your acting? Because obviously, I'm guessing you can fill us in, but when you left school, you did whatever you did to get into your acting career. How do you fit that in with learning lines, learning your craft as an actor?
Well, firstly, I never went to drama school. I was part of the University of Life. When I left school at the age of 16, I became part of the design team at Swan Hunter Shipbuilders. I was part of the hull design, and I worked at Swan Hunter Shipbuilders for 5 years.
Wow!
And again, I don't know if you know where Swan Hunter Shipbuilders is, in a place called Wallsend, and that is on the banks of the River Tyne.
Tyne, yeah, of course. So you buy water again.
Buy water all the time. So maybe there was just the stars are aligned in my life, and again, it has been the one constant in my life, this extraordinary river, one of the oldest in the world. So subliminally, the need to be alongside water has always kind of been there. So every time I got the chance after work, being in hull design, you work in a thing called CAD/CAM, computer aided design and manufacture. That finished, you away from the computer. So you had, especially, in the spring and summer months, you had a lot of daytime to go fishing, which I would nearly every evening, and go with my Uncle Matheson, which I still do today, or just try some of the rivers up at Bellingham or the North and South Tyne or near Bywell and all the other beautiful big beats that exist here, and use different methods to catch fish. And at that time, we're talking 82 to 86. At that time, I caught and I harvested the fish. I would take my limit for 4 salmon. It was a good salmon river there, and it still is for different reasons though. But I would take my quota and either freeze it or give it to relatives and eat wild Atlantic salmon, which, if you're old enough to be around when you were able to eat wild Atlantic salmon, tastes nothing like you get in the restaurants today, because what you get in restaurants today obviously is farmed.
Yeah.
But I was still fishing nearly every other day, and got hold of a fly rod given to me by my Uncle Matheson, and got into tying nymphs, pheasant tail nymphs with Matheson, and we'd just go down and catch trout, and I loved it. Then when I turned professional, that's when everything changed as an actor.
Yeah.
I turned professional in 1986, and when you're telling stories, like you say, there's a lot of lines to learn, and there's no 9 to 5 with acting. It's 24/7, and like after this interview, I've got lines to learn for a show I'm about to start, and that will take me till about 9-10 tonight. In acting, you're up at 4:30 in the morning, but not to go fishing. It's to go into the makeup room, have your makeup on. You then go on set, you rehearse, and you're working till easy. You're working 16, 18-hour days, and sometimes 7 days a week, and you have no holidays or anything like that. However, luckily, which we'll get onto, I'm sure, what happened was I got a job later on in my life that got me back into fishing.
Yeah.
But in terms of stopping the fishing, that did happen from the age of about 22 to 28. There were rare occasions when I'd go fly fishing. It's just because I didn't have the time, and it was all consuming, and I had to earn a living and pay bills, and fishing wasn't doing that at that time.
No, of course. How did that be? If you was doing the whole CAD piece with the shipyard, how did the acting start? I know this is a slight tangent. It's not fishing, but was you doing some sort of local productions or whatever?
Yeah. So very early on, I was Joseph in his Technicolor Dreamcoat at the age of 7. I just loved standing up and telling stories.
Fantastic.
I don't know where that came from, and storytelling is everything. And we've all of us have extraordinary stories to tell, and reminding us that the most ordinary life can be extraordinary, not because of what you're given, but because of what you're able to achieve. And my mum and dad had great taste in film, so I'd go to the cinema a lot. And the first movie I ever saw as a kid was Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
Fantastic.
Angela Lansbury. It was an amazing movie. And then Cool Hand Luke, and then The Magnificent Seven. And I just wanted to be part of that world, because it was a window to the world. And I discovered that stories at a very early age could change the way you think and think about the way you fit within the world you live in, and can change your opinions on so many issues that's going on in the world. I think it's a very, very powerful kind of medium, cinema and TV. As we all know, TV is incredibly powerful and changes the way we think about the world. And so I just wanted to be part of it. So I joined a youth theatre very early on at Backworth, and just played characters in local plays. And at the age of 16, when I left school and joined the shipyard, I was part of while fishing, I was part of a drama group at Backworth, and the director there said, "Do you know you have the ingredients to survive in this industry?" Because that's all acting is. You got to survive, man. You're only as good as your last job, so they say. And like fishing, I loved it. like acting and storytelling was a necessity. But there was always those voices, Dave, telling me that it's called imposter syndrome, that I don't belong, that your future is in industry, be it shipbuilding, be it engineering, be it the mines. That's your pathway, and that's all, because that's all that surrounds you, and that's all you know. Really,
it's all your family's done. It's all your friends do.
Yeah. So I kind of just thought, do you know what? Like fishing, acting will be a hobby that I love. So I had these things to do, and that's what it's all about. That's what fishing is. I was on holiday recently with my partner, and we were fly fishing, and everybody else was sunbathing. This guy came up and he went, "What a wonderful thing to do." He just said, "You're doing something. You're just occupying your mind with something you really like." And they say an occupied mind doing something you like is a very, very happy mind. And so with acting and fishing, it really was a great leveler from money worries and work worries, as was the main topic of conversation with my family, because we were always struggling financially. So that was at that time an escape.
Would the two go hand in hand? I.e., I'm thinking here, you're doing some production at the local theatre group or whatever, and you're 17 years of age. You've finished your shift down at the shipyard, so you're going and chucking a fly out for the evening. Are you reciting lines? Are you thinking about your drama side of things whilst you're relaxing on the bank?
All the time.
Yeah,
all the time.
It's hand in hand, right?
Yeah, it is. It's so true. However, if it's a good fishing day, everything disappears, and no word of a lie. I was doing Grantchester last year, and I'd had a belting weekend with my lovely friend James Murray. I had a belting weekend. We caught a few, and I hadn't learnt the lines in the way I usually did, and I really struggled for a couple of days in front of the camera. They were going, "Oh, you're not your usual self, Robson." I went, "Yeah," and the cameraman went, "Yeah, you've been fishing?" Because he was an angler as well. So my mind had been occupied with catching a bar of silver rather than learning the lines within a scene. But
so
usually,
it can be a distraction.
It can, but it is a great way to focus and think about while you're waiting or reading the water and knowing when a good time to cast is. You can just sit back and do a bit of work in a beautiful setting.
Absolutely. There was the playwright, his name escapes me somewhat, or the writer, where he says fishing is a worm at one end and a fool at the other. So, I mean, I'd go with that. The fish always win, don't they?
A jerk at one end of the line, waiting for a jerk at the other. Yes,
that's right. I can't remember who said that.
Was it Girac? No, John Girac.
It was. Do you know what? While we're talking, I might have to have a little snoop on Google and find that out, because that will frustrate. Because it's a really great line. Whenever I have a bad day, I always think, yeah, they're right. I've sat there like the idiot, and the fish have won. But fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's come a little bit further on then. So that's how the story began, if you like, in terms of your fishing career, and then obviously building with the acting piece.
Sure.
So that period of 20s reminds me. There's no parallels here, but it reminds me a little bit when I sort of worked overseas from being 23 till 30, and I could only pick up a rod on very odd occasions when the opportunity presents itself. I remember I was taken to a lake in the middle of the mountains once, just in the Canary Islands, and managed a 25-pound carp. I'd not fished for about 4 years. It was like the greatest feeling ever.
Wow.
Things like that. So that must have been really frustrating, but at the same time, you were building an insane career in terms of, the singing piece, the soldier, all the way. Am I right in my little bit of research again? Was Unchained Melody 7 weeks at number one?
Well, yeah. I mean, that was an insane time. I
bet it was.
Imagine as part of your life that you never intended to happen. So I was in a huge monster hit series called Soldier, and a lot of your listeners, if you're old enough, you'll remember that time.
Oh yes, even I remember
that time. Yeah, and it was beautifully written, it was beautifully produced, and the people in front of the lens were just at the top of their game, and thankfully I was surrounded by them all, and it was like at its height was watched by 23 million people.
Yeah, crazy.
And there was this episode in series 3. We were filming in 1993, No, I tell a lie. We were filming it in 1992. It came out in 1993. So we're filming a series in 1992, and one of the episodes, there's a scene where there's a wedding. The band don't turn up. Myself and the actor Jerome Flynn sing a song, and this is in 1992. This is the first time I've told this story. In 1992, and we sing Unchained Melody. And it's not the greatest version, but Jerome and I are trained singers, and we finish the scene, and everybody applauds in the scene, and it's part of the story. As the episode is cut together in the editing room, we get a phone call from the editor who says, "You do know that's a number one. You do know it's your number one. It's got a number one written all over it, Robson. It's a lovely version." And I went, yeah, but we're actors. There's no way we'd pursue a music career. And the episode then goes out in 1993. It's the summer of 1993, goes out, really popular episode, lovely write-ups about it. And then there's a phone call to my agent. There's a man who my agent and no one has ever heard of ringing up saying, we would love Robson to release that, Robson and Jerome to release that as a record. The man on the phone was a guy you may have heard of called Simon Cowell.
I was going to say it wasn't Simon Cowell, was it? That was around the time he was dressing up as a dog.
That's right. Anyway, he goes on, and I'm like, there's no way that's going to happen. And he just continued. This is in 1993.
Yeah.
He continued all the way through in 93 to the point where he rang my mother. He somehow got my mother's number via spies in the Northeast, trying to convince my mother to convince me to sing. And I said no. In 1994, he continued to call to the point where I got a lawyer because it was harassment.
It sounds like Alex Ferguson trying to sign Shearer.
Oh, that's very different. Anyway, I said, look, this is going to get legal if you don't leave off. He then says, I will pay you this amount of money if you record Unchained Melody. And after he told me the amount of money, I started gargling. So it was a life-changing amount of money where I thought I could do a lot of great things within the industry. I could start a film company. I could get scripts. I could employ people. My God, that's all I was thinking. I wasn't thinking anything else. And I continue to do that today. I could invest in people and I could create an infrastructure up here, a little production company with that amount of money. So within a very, very, very short space of time, the next thing Jerome Flynn and I know, we are on stage, on top of the pops, number one, and in the audience as Bon Jovi, Michael Jackson, Elton John, David Bowie, Oasis, who hated us, because I don't know if you know, we kept Oasis off number one. And we entered the Guinness Book of Records for the fastest selling single in the history of British popular music, outselling the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. I'm glad it stopped. I think that was the highlight. And I'm glad one episode of Animal Hospital where a woman came in with two guinea pigs, and when asked what's the problem with the guinea pigs, she said, it's Robson. He's not right. And Robson the guinea pig died live on television. And I just thought, do you know what? That's a signal. We need to stop this nonsense. But we had 3 number ones, 3 number one albums, and it was an extraordinary time singing alongside Tina Turner and Cher and Alice Cooper and all the greats, Lionel Richie. I mean, it was incredible.
Unbelievable, yeah. And when I was doing my little research, I think there's still a record in there as I know you said the fastest selling, but I think the sheer number of the album that you put together, I think is still within the top 10.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And certainly with duos, I mean, you don't really get male duos as such anymore, do you? It's quite a unique thing, yeah.
And I was trying to get Jerome into the fishing, but because I mean, it was an insane roller coaster and no time for self. And on a very, very kind of dark note, I started to go down an avenue that was incredibly destructive mentally and towards the worst period of it physically as well. And I needed help, and part of the avenue out of that dark place was fishing.
Absolutely.
And so that's what got me out of that pit, so to speak.
Let's talk then about the post crazy area, what you just talked about, the 90s, and then how we've come into the extreme fishing, the ultimate catch, all that side of things. And by the way, if the listeners are I'm sure, come across before, but some of these fantastic, I think you did one called Coast. It was the Northumberland Coast.
Tales from Northumberland,
And another, you went and saw, does Jerome now live in Wales, if I remember
That's
right?
in Pembrokeshire, yeah.
Yeah, there was a great thing. So some of these walk-in and documentaries that you've done are fantastic as well. But
so lucky.
Talk about these. Just made a note. Samuel Johnson said the world at one end and the fool at the other. But the fishing series. So you've come out of the crazy times, if you like, and then you've had the opportunity to do these fantastic fishing series. How did they come about? Who approached you to do them?
So I'm doing a movie in Texas called Prey of the Bone. A lovely film. And we're filming in Austin, and we have to promote the film. So we're there in this kind of press gang, and a guy goes, it's a very heavy film you're involved in. The subject matter is really dark and really kind of gritty, and you really have to go below the surface. Well, what do you do to get out of this? What do you do to relax, Robson? So what do you do to relax, Robson? And I said, I like fly fishing. Well, you go fishing for flies? I went, no, we use a fly to catch a fish. And he had no idea what I was talking about. Anyway, I said, fishing is my thing. Fishing is my everything. Fishing is not an escape from life. It's a greater immersion into it, which was far too poetical an answer for what he wanted. You just thought, oh, this guy's a bit weird. And where'd you go fishing? In Austin, Texas? Coincidentally, a producer called Hamish Barber watched the interview. He lived in Glasgow, and for some unknown reason, he was watching TV at 11 o'clock at night in a hotel room, skipping channels, and he saw me on TV talking about fishing. Within 24 hours, he's on to my agent, saying, would I be interested in a fishing show? And I said, I said no, because I'm not a presenter. I always know my limitations, and I always think you've got to be really careful with the artistic choices you make. And truth be known, if it wasn't for Hamish Barber, the series would never have been made, because the first episode was terrible. I was awful, but that's another story. He just went, do you want to give it a go? We want to take you to Costa Rica, we want to take you to South Africa, and we want to take you to all these incredible places with these iconic rivers. Anyway, it was a very, very strange conversation with my ex-wife, because it was an extraordinary commitment, but it was the opportunity of a lifetime, and I thought we could work it out. And so the rest is history. After 15 series of the fishing format, I'm still doing it today. But that's how it started. It was just by chance. Hamish Barber of IWC Productions in Glasgow at 11 o'clock at night in a hotel room was skipping channels, and he saw me do an interview and said, I like fishing. And he went, I want that guy to front a fishing show.
Written in the stars, like you say. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right place, right time.
Yeah.
Do you know one thing, though, and this is not, by the way, and this is I can't think of the word. I'm not being disrespectful at all, but there's one thing that does miss out of all your shows, and it's obviously a purpose, and it might be to do with the fact at the start when you said you're not the greatest angler on earth, but you don't talk tactics whatsoever. It's pure catching fish, which actually for me and for the non-angler perhaps is a great angle. You're not saying, oh, I'm using X pound line, this is the pattern. Is that by design or default?
No, that was the remit of the show. I could wax lyrically about line density, flow rates, water temperature, which is essential. Knots. I mean, we did an episode where we weren't catching fish, and this guy went, we were in Australia, and he went, Robson, I can tie 20 knots in 30 seconds. I was like, 20 knots in 30 seconds? That's impossible. Yeah. I went, okay. He said, well, maybe a minute. I went, okay, you want to tie 20 knots in a minute on a piece of nylon, go on then, knock yourself out. And as he's doing it, I just went, have you ever kissed a girl?
Exactly, yeah.
I was just like,
Get alive.
there are knots that are the essential part, and density is everything. And I try to bring an angle in to catch a fish. You got to think like a fish.
Yes.
There are so many methods we can use. There are so many people think they know the best way to catch a fish, the best lure, the best presentation, the best form of retrieve, the best time to go out a fish. However, if we knew everything about catching fish, they would disappear because we would have caught them all by now.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it's still wonderful we don't know. So that was deliberate. The complexities of tactics, times, and all the other complexities which are essential within fishing. He just went, Robson, just tell us how you feel. Because we wanted to appeal not only to anglers, but people who enjoy the scenery. People who enjoy the wildlife.
Yeah.
I mean, I never in my wildest dreams thought I'd travel to Costa Rica to catch the fastest fish in the world, which is the sailfish, Ichthyophorus platypteris, and Ichthyophore mean carrying the sail. On its back, this thing that can travel at nearly 70 miles an hour hydrodynamically, it's perfect in design. I never thought I'd see this creature leap through the water, and then while we're on our way back, you come across a super pod of dolphins, which I think by design are put on this planet to make you smile. So it was the travelogue, the what lies beneath kind of curiosity. The catch, will I get it? The jeopardy that's involved in fishing? You travel all this way. Are you going to get this creature that you're talking about? So there was a kind of story unfolding. So it wasn't just about the tactics. And as the series progressed, I thought maybe I know a bit about fishing and I could bring that aspect into it. But the producers, of which I was one, we just got together, and it was more the people seeing the world through your eyes. So vicariously, they're spending an hour with you, and they just want to enjoy that hour of where you are, who you're with, which is incredibly important in fishing, and what you're after. And what I learned from the series was that fish tend not to reside in ugly places, man. And no matter what you're after or who you're with or what you're trying to catch, it is always difficult to be unhappy. Because the fish are great barometers for us all. My mate James Murray always calls it the canary in the coal mine. If you've got healthy fish in the ocean, you've got healthy fish in the river, it kind of signals that all is well in the world. When they go missing and they're in decline and they're not there anymore, we got a serious problem. Yeah. And sadly, we're heading towards that. But that's what I got from the series. And yes, it was a deliberate decision not to go down, okay, this is the rig I'm going to use. This is a setup, and I'll tell you why I use the setup. Usually I'd just go, I'm using this fly because it replicates the bait species in this area. And if I retrieve it in a certain way, it'll replicate a distressed bait fish, and hopefully the creature we're after will go for it. And nine times out of 10, that was enough. Yeah. And if we did kind of elaborate on tactics, it was reduced in the edit. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, no, I totally get it, because I mean, let's look at the most popular fishing show of recent times on terrestrial telly with the White House and Mortimer thing. Yeah, so they're not talking tactics. They're all about the outdoors. They're all about the quarry. They're all about the location. I love the angle with the accommodation on that. Yeah, and that as fascinating as the fishing bit. Look at these great places that they stay in. And so I totally get it. I'm just interested as to whether that was the brief or not. It was, and like you say, Dave, watching Paul and Bob, which I adore, and I don't know if you saw the last Christmas special, where they came on the Tyne. They did. And I suddenly realized, I just went, do you know what I'm watching here? I'm just watching two people who enjoy living. Mm. They're just enjoying life. And I know there's cameras there or anything, but they're skilled enough and relaxed enough and confident enough to actually put over the joy of the outdoors, the joy of being alongside water, the joy of seeing fish in the water, and the joy of catching a fish as well, and everything that goes with fishing. is so life affirming, and so good for you. And I think that really comes across, and I think that's why people watch it. They just want to watch two guys who really enjoy life.
Do you know there was that sub story as well, wasn't there? It's not been eroded, but it's sort of filtered out a wee bit over the last couple of series, of course, about the whole health conditions, and that's how the story started. It was, I think, Paul had his stents or whatever,
bypass, wasn't it? Yeah,
bypass, and then had to take. Bob was the same. Let's go out fishing. Let's get some fresh air, and it grew from there as to where it is today. And
absolutely,
no, fantastic. If you was to choose one of your favourite episodes, what would it be?
It would be the Christmas one, because it was on the Tyne.
Sorry, I meant your own.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, your own, not Bob. We can get back to Paul and Bob, but no, your own. So I'm looking at Extreme Fishing, 4 series, yours.
No. So, it was a hybrid of many, and came in many shapes or forms. It went from Extreme Fishing to Fish Fight. It was all the same show, Dave. Yeah. It was all the same show. Those 15 series were all the same show. And but the best one for me was when in series 3 we were in the Philippines, and we caught nothing. It was a storm. I was on an island, and we suggested that the theme would be, now that I've had 2 series under my belt, maybe I know a bit about fishing, and maybe I have to eat what I catch and survive off fishing for a couple of days on an island, like a kind of Robinson Crusoe scenario.
Yeah, that's quite cool. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, it's my favourite episode because it's an absolute disaster. I suddenly discovered I know nothing about fishing. I was a fish out of water, way out of my depth. I rang the producer. I went, get me off this island and get me back to the hotel. But it was one of the best examples of travelogue, celebration of a beautiful country with its over 7,000 islands, extraordinary people who do things that books cannot teach you, the celebration of community and how people rely on each other and rely on the water that surrounds them, and how fish are revered in that area. Introduced to using nature as an indicator for catching a fish. I'm sure you've been out and at sea sometimes, and the captain will look for birds flying at a certain height in the sea because they've spotted something, or using a landmark, or smelling fish that have been eaten by a marlin or a sailfish, because if they hit the bait fish, it sends out an oil into the air. I've been with people who can smell fish from like 500 yards away, and they turn the boat around and you go cast your fly in that direction. Yeah. So the Philippines episode, it was just the full package of travelogue, celebration of people, celebration of species we were after, but a real celebration of community and people and a culture and an identity and a real sense of self. And that's gorgeous to be alongside when you're doing something, especially fishing. I mean, as I said right at the start, most of my best mates are anglers, men and women.
Yeah. I mean, majority of my fishing is, apart from a few lovely rivers where I live, it is, normally fishing a bit of a muddy puddle, if you like, and you do lose a bit of an element of that. But I can empathise with the story you just said. The greatest experience for me fishing was catching a sailfish. And it was very more commercial. It was Florida Keys. But what was really interesting that just made me think of this memory, it was 10 years ago this year as well, is that we had a bit of a legendary captain. He was called Jack Kelly. He was very well, he's not with us anymore, bless him, but he was very well-known captain off Florida Keys. And he was like that. Forget your fish finders, not interested. He'd go from where a cloud was in the sky, how the wind's just changed, how the current seems to have just changed against the bow. Yeah. All these weird and wonderful, just from living on the water for 60 plus years. And to get that from all these different cultures that you've experienced. What a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've travelled to over 130 countries, be it the Azores catching skipjack tuna, to catching hapuka in New Zealand, to catching the barramundi on the fly in Australia, or catching fish in China and Africa, on the Zambezi, on the Nile. And of course, the Amazon. I've been traveled the Amazon from source to sea, from the Andes in Peru, all the way to Rio. Well, what an extraordinary privilege that is. And I said, and a lot. I got a lot of stick from the angling community where they were going, talk tactics. You know, you're not.
Well, that's why I raised this. That's why I raised.
What are you going on about? And I was like, oh gosh, I know, but there are other people far, far more qualified than me to actually do what the anglers are asking. I can only do what I do, and luckily for me, a lot of people were watching the series. But it's a monster series. I mean, in South Africa. I mean, it's shown in 44 territories to date. So the recognition I get recognized for the acting work I do, but traveling abroad, everybody's, are you the guy who does the fishing show? I was in Bermuda recently. I've just got back from Antigua, Iceland, South Africa. Ridiculous.
Does it not work the other way when you're fishing? Do not say, are you the guy that sung the other guy who sung that song that's at number one for ages?
You know, listen, so this is true. Not so long ago, I live in Northumberland, beautiful place called Hexham, and I'm on the Tyne, and I was casting a line last season. This guy comes up and he goes, "Yeah, right, Mr. Green, you're that fellow off the television, aren't you, who does the fishing programs?" He says, "I'll watch you with interest." And then there was a pause, and he went, "You're an irritating bugger." and as he walked off, he went, "Tight lines."
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
I bet you laughed though, didn't you?
Of course. That's the best form of, the best things are criticism. I don't want to be liked all the time. Goodness.
Oh, that is brilliant.
It was great. So, but luckily, I've been accepted into the angling world, and my fly casting still to date may be described as ugly, but the fish don't seem to mind because I keep catching a few. But it's nice. I opened the Tay this season. Opened the fishing season with my mate Jim Murray. I opened the D not so long ago, and I'm asked to go on fishing trips around the world, which I still find extraordinary. I always look over my shoulder because I don't think they're talking to me. It's bizarre.
Fantastic. Tell us about some of the. I'm just a question just popped in my mind because we spoke about a couple of other shows there. What are the challenges filming fishing on set for a show like these? I mean, I've got a YouTube channel. Tons of people, everybody can set up a bit of a GoPro and make a homemade video, but to do it professionally with all the equipment that's needed, the cast, the crew, etc. What are the main challenges you come across apart from catching the actual fish, which is obviously the bigger?
Well, you've hit it on the head. That's it. It's you are under pressure to tell a story, and at the end of the story there has to be a payoff. So we go to the Azores, and when we go to the Azores, we're going to catch a blue marlin. That's what the producer thinks, and that's what a lot of the team who aren't anglers think's going to happen. I always love it in the script. They're going, and after Robson catches the marlin, he will turn to camera and talk about what a wonderful experience it's been in the Azores. And I'm thinking, do you know how difficult it is to catch a marlin? It doesn't. You don't just go out and catch one. Sometimes it doesn't happen. And I remember the first day going out with the film crew, of which on average there's 10. You have people there. You have fixers. You have associate producers. You have people sorting out permissions. You have on average 2 to 3 camera people. You have a director, and you have a producer, and they're just making it all goes according to plan. And usually every aspect of it does, but there's one part of it doesn't, and that's catching the fish. And you have to have the payoff, and that's the biggest challenge, is telling the story. And 8 times out of 10 we have changed the story because you have to shoot what's actually happening. So for instance, we went to Naha in Okinawa. We were going to go for mahi-mahi. People call it dorado. Well, actually, it's falsely called dorado. Dorado is a Spanish word for golden. That's because it refers to the golden hue. But actually, the true golden dorado in South America, that's a different fish. But this is a mahi-mahi. Mahi being a Polynesian word, which means strong. Mahi-mahi, very strong. So we were going to go out and in the script, catch one on the fly. And there was a typhoon. So we filmed 4 days of being basically in an air raid shelter, sheltering from the storm.
Wow.
But the story we told was like humans. Once that storm settles, those fish are going to be hungry and they're going to be active. And that was the story. And on the final 2 days, we went out and all hell broke loose. It was fantastic. But that's, and I'm going a really long way around in answering your question. The challenge is the payoff.
Nature as well.
Yeah. The challenge is always the weather. The challenge is always the contributors not really adhering to the story because they've got other ideas. Do you know what I mean? But it's a challenge I always love.
You ever felt unsafe? Some of these places you've been to, that have their own challenges.
Yeah. Well, once I thought I was going to die off the Brooks Peninsula off Canada. We were going for black cod and we hit a force 10, which was a hurricane. And I don't know if you know, when you're going out to sea and the swell is so high, I mean, it's just they're mountainous waves, and anyone who's been in a mountainous swell, they're mountainous. And you think you're going to die.
Wow.
And you can't turn around. So we went 36 hours of hell. And I'm not a religious man, but I did have a few words with the Almighty. But we made it after 36 hours. And the other one was in Senegal, and it just got dangerous, man. There were a lot of people who didn't want us there, to the point where we had to have bodyguards. That was scary. That was really scary. But other than that, we went to some beautiful places, met some beautiful people, and caught some lovely fish.
Yeah, because I always thinking of the array of fishing shows that you can watch. I always remember Jeremy Wade getting hit by lightning.
Yeah.
Oh, getting hit by lightning. How scary is that?
Yeah, it happened in Panama. But it was a great backdrop, and they caught it on camera. We just got this sheet lightning happening, and then this stuff was I thought was just about to hit the boat, and I thought, God, what a way to go!
Yeah.
But it's interesting. The 2 times that I've described where I nearly lost my life. The producer, Hamish, back in Glasgow, went, "Is everybody all right?" I went, "Yes." He went, "Did you get it on film?"
That's the end goal. Yeah,
it is, and usually we did, and so I think that's what set it apart from other fishing shows.
Yeah,
the fishing in all the shows I've done was always a backdrop, as it always is to our lives. When we go, there's so much more to it than just catching a fish. I know it's a cliche, but it's true.
I love it. Well, that brings us if by default, we've gone around from starting. We even spoke a little about singing. And then, of course, these wonderful angling series that you've done. What about going into the future then? So past, present, future, what's the plans for Robson Green now from a personal, because I'm quite interested, personal perspective and from a fishing sense?
Well, I'm in a great place at the moment. I've done okay with the acting, and it's still going ahead. I'm about to embark on another series of Grantchester, very, very popular series, not only in Britain, but abroad. It's a monster in America, 1950s, a period drama revolving around the relationship between a detective and a priest, played by the lovely Tom Brittney. And a priest who has people confessing their sins is a very good tool for a detective. So, so that's going on. There is... looks like just need to sign the dotted line, but another series of Coast to Coast, where I'll be traveling to some of the most idyllic places in the United Kingdom, meeting some, larger than life people. Again, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And myself and my very good friend James Murray, we shot a series in Iceland last year called Robson and Jim's Icelandic Fly Fishing Adventure, which is on ITV Hub at the moment, and on Apple Play and other platforms. And
I must say, the place looks absolutely stunning.
It is, but what it reminds us, Dave, is what our rivers used to be like.
Yeah, crystal
we
clear,
used to have rivers like that, and the reason why they are so prolific in Iceland and expensive is because people look after them and people take care of them, and they manage them because they realize how important fishing is, the tourism industry, but fish in general, how important they are to that country in a certain way that they're kind of revered. I mean, it's no joke that if the cod were to leave Iceland, the economy would collapse.
Yeah.
That's how reliant they are on the fishing. So they really manage the waters well. Yeah. It's all about sustainability. So we visited there and caught some extraordinary fish. on the fly. And again, a celebration of a country that not only makes sure its species survives, but thrives as well. And, you know, we could take a feather out their cap and apply their management kind of system applied to this country, which we're doing. There's some amazing people doing extraordinary things here. So Jim and I are in pre-production of Robson and Jim's British fly fishing adventure.
Okay,
in which we'll be Jim and I will be visiting the big 5 rivers in Scotland. We'll be doing an episode on the Tyne, and we'll be doing an episode in Wales, and meeting contributors like Sam Fender, the great rock star, Newcastle's answer to Bruce Springsteen. We've got Dominic West. We've got a lovely actor, Dominic West, who's playing Prince Charles in The Crown at the minute. We've got some great contributors, Wayne Vowden, the blind angler. Wayne ties flies and fly fishes, and he's B1 blind.
What a great story.
Yeah. And we've got Alex Lewis as well, who was an athlete and who acquired a horrendous disease and resulted in him losing 4 limbs. So Alex is a quadriplegic, and we're going to go fishing with Alex as well. So it's a really kind of life-affirming story, not only celebrating some of the most beautiful rivers and species that we have in this country, but also the extraordinary stories that are linked to fishing.
Well, I think that's a great point for me we can summarise, or we spoke before briefly about the increase in participation, I guess, since the pandemic began. And I've got a few friends that work in the industry, and you can see it on the bank, and you can see that it is not only have those guys been inspired to maybe pick up a rod for the first time or dust off the gear, which was in the attic, but actually it's sustaining. And that's a fantastic thing. So how do you see the future of angling in the UK?
I think by default, we've had to intervene. It doesn't take a clever person to work out the graph of our fish species is going in the wrong direction. So we have to do something about it. It's a very nuanced argument. It's down to climate change. It's down to pollution, all caused by us. It's down to predation. There's too many cormorants on this river now that never used to exist 50 years ago. And that's in a very short space of time. There's been this rapid decline. So we do have to intervene. But the horizon is really healthy. Just from my experience, being alongside the tracking program on the Moray Firth, people who are checking how the smolt numbers are doing, leaving the big rivers that are fed by the Moray Firth in Scotland. The hatchery in the Tyne is so important to its survival. And again, in the Towie in Wales or the other rivers around Cornwall and Britain, there are so many wonderful people, old and young, men and women, dedicating their lives to making sure that our rivers and our fish can be enjoyed for generations to come. And that's what I'm getting. I think we need to stop the shouting, and I think we need to stop kind of using the documentary Seaspiracy as the barometer of what to do. You can't tell people to stop eating fish. I think it's a ludicrous argument. But what we can do is say, let's stop the shouting, let's stop the hating, let's stop the hunches of why things are happening. Let's get evidence-based solutions here. If it is predation, let's get the evidence and put it in front of the policymakers so we can bring about change. It's no point guessing. And let's stop hating people who are trying to make a living out of fishing, because that's all people are doing. There is mass overfishing. The industrial trawlers, that's a ridiculous argument. But we do have to find a way forward. And there are so many people now, lovely people, committed people, who are doing that in order for, species, not only salmon, but all sorts of species in the ocean, in our rivers, to prosper. And I think, and I feel the horizon's looking very healthy when it comes to that.
I agree. There's some brilliant projects in place, and there's one or two disturbing ones, but have actually been challenged really well by various communities, not just angling.
Yeah.
There was a ludicrous idea around some barriers in the Norfolk Broads, which would have stopped a huge mass migration of coarse fish to their spawning grounds.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it wasn't just challenged by anglers; it was by local groups as well, and hopefully that will stop and common sense will prevail. But loads of good work, I agree.
Yeah,
I think that's a
right.
really good way to summarise things.
Absolutely.
Well, what a great chat. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Fantastic.
It really has. I'm going to go and watch a bit of extreme fishing now. What are you going to do?
Me, I'm going to go fishing.
Good
I'm
lad.
going to try and catch my first springer of the season. That's what I'm going to do, mate. I know it's February, but they'll be travelling. The water's a good height. It's a good temperature.
Yeah,
might get one. You never know. I'll let you know if I do.
Agree. No, you do that, and I think tomorrow I'm going to try and go for maybe a nice couple of perch.
Lovely.
Spawning season for them soon, so they're nice and
brilliant.
round. And
brilliant.
We'll see how we go. So fantastic. Thank you so much, Robson.
Top man, Dave.
I wish you all the best in your future ventures.
Lovely to chat to you.
For all your fishing needs, be sure to check out Fishing Evolution. Boasting 2 floors of branded displays, visit our recently expanded superstore at Hadley Road in Sleaford, where we offer a huge range of tackle from all of the leading coarse and carp brands, such as Nash, Fox, Corda, Drennan, Preston, Guru, Daiwa, and many, many more. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram, where we share all of the latest news and updates about products available in store.
Okay, let's take a step into the metaphorical tackle shed and kicking off with Angling Times. 6 of the best, it's called, and it's choosing 6 running water float patterns. And I think this has caught my eye because fishing rivers predominantly this winter, and it takes a while to find, I guess, a pattern or a float that you're feeling comfortable with. Well, what Angling Times have done here is they've chosen 2 stick float patterns, a waggler, almost like a specie wag, a dumpy waggler, and then 2 pole floats. And I guess John Allerton stick floats, the original classic stick float designed by the river legend John Allerton, an alloy stemmed float with a shouldered balsa body. They're still available. It looks like they come in a pack of 5. And if you go onto John's own website, which is www.allertonsangling.co.uk, for those of us that remember, back in the day, these were an iconic float and still available and still the best. Running very closely to them, though, and I bought a couple of patterns, more of a slimmer shouldered float for the pole, or more for whip fishing, is the Dave Harrell range. Now these are his number 1 insert sticks, and they've got quite a rounded shoulder, but with a hollow tip, so obviously you can see them at distance. That's the difference between them and the John Allerton ones, where they're at more of a balsa tip. But I've been really impressed with those Dave Harrell ones. I can't remember, I think they're number 3s, much slimmer, carbon stem. And the idea for those, when I purchased them, was to almost have a bulk halfway and then some strung out shot below. When you're fishing to hand with quite a long whip, so I bought them in 3 gram plus sizes. So yeah, a couple of a classic pattern and a classic shape with a modern twist. But pole float wise, this one caught my eye because the Angling Times describes this, that if you was to only choose 1 river pole float, this would be it, and it's the Daiwa Agata. And it says a pole float with round body and wire stem. The line passes through the body for additional strength. The thick fibre bristle is highly visible yet super sensitive. And it says an adaptable float that can be run at pace or slowed down, ideal for big roach and perch. If you could carry only 1 river pole float, this would be it. And they range from sort of 0.5 gram up to 3 gram. So that could be an option. If you're struggling with your patterns and your float shapes when fishing rivers, running water, it is a bit of a minefield because you're not too sure the pace, the weather conditions. You start getting an upstream wind, things like that. But that could be an option. One from me though, I've been having a little bit of success. We've quite enjoyed using this winter is a Drennan SF3. And that is a lovely float for catching through the water, but also you can bulk it down as a carbon stem. But yeah, no, that's a really nice float that I've found pretty useful. And sticking with the theme of pole floats, into Match Fishing magazine, new gear section, a full new Natural pole float range by Preston Innovations. You've got numerous shapes and patterns called the Kerry, the Paolo, the Power, and the Shipper, obviously all named after various consultants of Preston Innovations. I think it's the Kerry shape that catches my eye because it looks like it's quite a versatile shape, a classic sort of round, bodied pattern, fibre bristle, and that ranges from 0.5 gram up to 4 gram. So that could be something perhaps when fishing in deep water, skimmers, etc., but also rivers, I imagine, as well. So float patterns very much in the weekly and the monthly magazines just there. Next thing in match fishing caught my eye is a new range of pellets that are being launched by Dynamite. So big fish Kata pellets. The idea behind these, they come in just shy of 2 kilo bags. Two sizes, 6 and 8 mil. It's perfect for pinging at range and fishing such tactics as the bomb or pellet waggler. Low oil, uniform shape, dense pellet, specifically selected for accurate feeding. And the other range is a big fish method feeder pellets. So again, low oil, fishery friendly premium micro pellets to suit fishing the method easily. Easy to prepare. And again, big bag, just shy of 2 kilos. So it's looking at these, bit of extra value, I guess, with the bigger bags, but also aiming at bigger stamped species. So there's a couple of things from match fishing and angling times. Just whilst I delve into improve your course fishing, bit of a tried and tested piece from me. I'm just coming up to a year now since I purchased a full suit. I wanted to go down the Hulk and Hunt route, but there was quite a long lead time on getting that delivered. I just didn't have the time really, and a bit of an extra expense as well, albeit for Gore-Tex. But I went down the route of Leon Grant, and if anyone's familiar with the name Leon Grant or the Elite range that's out there, there's a couple of different companies that are utilising that range. Fantastic service. It was a bespoke pattern that I asked for, not bespoke sizes. I went with an off-the-shelf medium and it fits perfect. But, I chose my colours, where I wanted the name, etc., etc. And I was that impressed with the service and the quality when it arrived. I'd kicked myself and wish I'd have ordered a fleece as well. So initially I ordered bib and brace, waterproof pole jacket, and I then followed up with Kev over at Leon Grant to put together a windstopper fleece for me as well. So that's what I've been using now for nearly a year, and I must say, super impressed. Really well made, not got wet once, that is for sure. Really easy to clean. Instructions are there for you to sort of, I still use Nicky wax and things like that. It's just a force of habit. I've cleaned it once, gone through the washing machine, no problems at all, drip dry. Yeah, really good. So if anybody's in the market for a suit, rather than getting one of the off the shelf from the big tackle companies, or if you're thinking the Hulk and Hunt route, take a little look. Leon Grant. I promise you won't be disappointed. Very good. Anyway, on to improve your course fishing. And once we've had a scan through here, we'll then take a bit of a dive into the archives. Let's see what we could get for our pennies 20 years ago. Little reel here coming out from Shimano, a Sahara. Now, the Sahara range has been around for a number of years now, and this is a remodeling, a newer design, if you like. This is a 4,000 size, so perfect for feeder fishing. 280 grams, which will give it a nice weight to balance, a typical feeder rod, I guess, would be 11, 12 foot. Lots of tech that's been built into this as well. New gears, some new features on there also. And at the price of £75, not bad whatsoever. There's a wider range. This is reviewing the 4,000, but it actually goes from a tiny 500 model up to 5,000. So something for everything. I imagine those 500 models would be great for perhaps a bit of drop shotting. 5,000, perhaps rivers and long method feeder fishing. So Shimano, always quality reels. So perhaps that could be something that you'd take a look at if you was to be in the market for a new reel. Well, let's jump back into the archives in this magazine that I've been referring to throughout the podcast, the Angling Plus February 2002 edition. Actually, one thing I didn't point out on the first episode when I said I was going to start looking back at these old magazines, the prices of them. That's just out of interest as well. I mean, we talk about inflation and the challenges we've got now, but so this magazine, it was a monthly version. It was specifically for match fishing. February 2002 was £2.80 for a magazine. If I look at this month's match fishing, February 2022, £4.99. So nearly doubled in 20 years. That's about right, I guess. Okay, so the Good Gear Guide, that's what it was called in this. And the first thing straight away stands out, a section called, it's a bit like what I've just done there, tried and tested. And what I like about this is that they've chosen a bunch of chaps. There's a couple of guys from different angling clubs. There's the couple of reporters. But yeah, a nice mixture of abilities, I would say, and you know, non-bias, if that makes sense. But straight away, the first thing that's tested, the Daiwa Porky Pig 13-foot extra power quiver. Who remembers that? What an iconic rod. But at the time, it came with just one quiver tip, which was 4 ounce, so a beefy piece of kit. And it was £115. I imagine that rod, even now 20 years later, can still do a job fishing for barbel, chub, big chucks on reservoirs as well. So that one really stood out straight away. And I like the fact that this was actually tested by a guy called Dean Bradshaw, and he's from the JCB Angling Club. So I quite like that, the fact that they've got readers reviewing. And I know they do that in some of the other magazines as well, but yeah. Okay, into the new gear guide at the time. Who was releasing what? Well, Van den Einde, they were releasing some aquacolor dye. So if you wanted to dye, I don't know, I guess your pellets perhaps, bread, things like that. Yellow, black and red were the colours, £2.50 at the time. Shimano had released a budget pole, an all-round pole that won't break the bank. 12.5 metres, weighing in at just over 1,000 grams with 2 Power Top 2 kits. It was a Shimano Technium competition, available for only £270. Shimano Sahara, there we go. I've just literally spoke about the new version, which was in Improve Your Course Fishing. So this was out 20 years ago. I knew it had been around a while, but didn't know it was that much, 20 years plus. So this is a Shimano Sahara 3000 GTE. Now that was £65 then. If I'm not mistaken, I've just explained that the new one is 75, so that hasn't increased too much over the past 20 years. We've got some Preston Diatex 16-metre pole. That's another review tested by one of the readers. Don't remember that pole, I must admit. Drennan Polemaster fluorocarbon hook length. I still use that now. £3.95 a spool. That's a great line. Probably what the latest versions of Drennan's fluorocarbon was based off of. Now, if I have a little flick through and find perhaps one of the bigger tackle shops and find some prices, I'll find the first one with the largest advert. All Seasons Angling, Wigston, Leicester. There we go. Don't know whether those guys are still going or not, but this gives you a bit of an idea. What have they got on offer? They've got Daiwa poles, the Tournament 410. No price. RRP 3,900. Daiwa rods, Connoisseur Z 13-foot waggler. RRP 220, selling for 160. Drennan DRX rods. That doesn't ring a bell. DRX range, not sure. 13-foot carp waggler, £120. Keep nets. Key nets conserver nets, £30. Remember them key nets? They were massive in the net sphere. What else have we got? Right at the back, Foster's of Birmingham. Crikey. I used to go there regularly when I was working in Birmingham. Of course, now part of the world of Angling Direct. But what did they have on offer back in 2002? Well, they had Matchbox. Now, sadly, Matchbox, and I could have mentioned this in the news section, for those lovers of that brand, which was reinvigorated by Jim Burton, and I think he sold that to a company down south. Sadly, they folded. So Matchboxes that have been around for a long, long time, 20 years plus, are now no longer available. I saw that they had folded and are out of business, which is a very sad thing. But at the time, the new Matchbox, there are 2 versions out, the Gold and the Team. Gold was £410 and the Team was £400. Milo Tardis, I remember them as well. They were a very popular Conti-style seat box. 3-draw, £225. Kylie, do you remember them? Kylie Canal Box. A 6-draw version was £240. 3-draw, £207.99. So looking at that, there is no question that seat boxes have certainly gone up in price. And, well, obviously with the Reeve was benchmarking prices around £1,000. And, even your bog standard seat boxes are getting on for a few £100. What else do we have from Foster's of Birmingham? Garbolino poles, here we go. They had funny names. Exorcist, 13 metres, 945 grams, 2 power kits, 1 light top 3 kit, and a pole holder. One of the best poles we've ever seen for the price, £399. Map Match Tech, 16 metre pole, £1,169. Maver Grim Reaper, I remember them. One of Maver's best-selling poles, rated to 20 elastic with 1 top 3 kit, half-metre extension, pole bag, £210. Those were those early bagging poles, if you want to use that term. Probably puller kits were only just about coming around then as well. It used to be, you'd have 14 metres of pole waggling in the air with a lot of elastic trying to land a fish. Happy days. So yeah, that's what you got for your money back then in 2002. Well, that's it for episode 2 of series 3. And on the next episode, we're going to have Adam Richards from Frenzy. So any questions you'd like me to put to Adam, give us a shout. Drop me an email at eastwoodangling@gmail.com. Listen, as always, a big thank you for listening and sharing and subscribing and all the things that you do to spread the word of this podcast. As I've said many times, if there's nobody listening, there's no point in me doing these. But the figures are buoyant, so we will continue and try and capture these big names and keep posing your questions and having these chats. And hopefully you find the other sections interesting as well. One great thing that came out of this podcast, a chap dropped me a message who recognised my name and said, "Did you fish a match?" Way back, 1996, a junior competition. I said, "Yeah, that's right." And it turns out that I'd won this junior match. He'd come second. And he sent me a picture of the clipping out the paper. And I'd never seen that before. So little things like that, which bring back memories. And it was good to chat to the guy and bring back some memories of fishing. It was a place called Rhodes Lodges in Manchester all those years ago. So thanks for listening. And I look forward to putting together episode 3 of series 3.